It's the financing behind some of the biggest developments in Dubuque, like bringing in IBM and developing the industrial park. The city manager, the mayor, and but all its dealings are done in secret. Now, the scandal at Go Cedar Rapids after Nubo Evolve highlights the lack of oversight the public has into private nonprofits filling quasi-government roles.
We may never know the full story on how Nubo Evolve lost $2.3 million, including $500,000 of city hotel motel tax money. In Dubuque, there's a group that has an even bigger hand in city affairs, but with zero oversight from the public.
In the first of a two-part series, KCRG TV9's Allison Wong investigated the group Dubuque Initiatives. Allison, what is Dubuque Initiatives?
Well, the group is a little like a fairy godmother for the city of Dubuque. It steps in when the government can't and private businesses won't. And it all started with a federal grant in 1980. Since then, the group hasn't received a cent of public funding, but its role in Dubuque's government and economy has exploded. When Flex Steel threatened to move its headquarters out of Dubuque, taking 200+ jobs with it, Dubuque Initiatives stepped in.
They decided they wanted to stay in Dubuque, but they needed some help with that existing property. The city couldn't do it by themselves. The private sector wasn't interested in doing it by themselves, so Dubuque Initiative kind of bridges the gap.
And that's exactly how Dubuque Initiatives works. Take the Flex Steel deal. The prospect of renovating its current facility was too much for Flex Steel, and the city was limited in what it could offer to help. In comes Dubuque Initiatives. Flex Steel donates its current facility to Dubuque Initiatives, getting a tax write-off to help pay for a new $25 million facility in Dubuque's Industrial Park West. Dubuque Initiatives, as a non-government entity, is able to apply for grants to help demolish and clean up the former Flex Steel home.
The city came in with some financial support along with the county, along with Flex Steel. Now Dubuque Initiatives is taking some financial risk to help also.
Now, Dubuque Initiatives plans to redevelop the former Flex Steel lot and lease or sell it. That's how Dubuque Initiatives has been able to grow into a $40 million economic development engine.
So we haven't had any external funding for many, many years.
And it was Dubuque Initiatives that brought IBM to Dubuque. It bought and renovated the Roshek building, not the city and not IBM. The city, meaning taxpayers, guaranteed Dubuque Initiatives' mortgage to the tune of $25 million. A city audit notes that DI planned to use about $21 million in state tax credits to pay that off. Today, the city is off the hook, and Dubuque Initiatives still owns Roshek and leases to IBM and a growing list of other companies.
Heartland Financial has now gone in there, Cottingham and Butler, and so it's been the revitalization of that building has been very helpful for the community-wide, not just IBM.
Dubuque Initiatives restored other historic buildings, like the German Bank on Main Street. To do this, Dubuque Initiatives has no paid staffers, just a volunteer board. That board may look familiar. It's required to include the city manager, mayor, and 2 city council members. One of them is Councilwoman Kate Larson, who points to the Roshek building as why the group gets such strong backing from the city.
They do some strong community involvement things, like the Christmas at the Roshek building, and they're working hard to get small businesses in in those shops, and to make sure that people are shopping local and coming down there and staying downtown.
And that last part is the catch to all of this. All of Dubuque Initiatives deals, many involving tax dollars, are done in secret. And with that much money at stake, there's always a potential for conflict of interest, again, with no oversight. And the state audit did note that potential conflict of interest for the city. And the city itself even admits that taxpayers could be left on the hook. I'll explain that in part 2 tomorrow on KCRG TV9 News at 6. Live in Dubuque, Allison Wong, KCRG TV9 News.
A $40 million nonprofit is quietly behind many of Dubuque's biggest economic developments. A federal grant started Dubuque Initiatives nearly 40 years ago.
Today, it still receives taxpayer funding, and with the mayor, city manager, and 2 city council members sitting on its board, some people feel it creates a shadow government that's making secret backroom deals. KCRG TV9's Allison Wong joins us live tonight from Dubuque to explain. Allison?
Well, the state auditor even looked into the relationship between the city and Dubuque Initiatives. The group is essentially the city's top officials and business leaders meeting in private to do multi-million-dollar deals, often with taxpayer dollars on the table. Dubuque Initiatives was key to the deal that kept FlexSteel's headquarters in Dubuque.
Those are 200 people that have living wage jobs and supporting their families.
But that deal also exemplifies the concern with Dubuque Initiatives.
I felt that they were an extension of the City Council because they do work so closely with us.
But DI is not a part of the city. That lets it negotiate these deals, often involving tax incentives in private.
Once it was made public, all the information is out there. But during the discussions on that, it's just not appropriate to be involved with, to have it in the public eye.
But the public does have a stake in this. In a 2014 financial audit, city manager and DI board member Mike Van Milligan notes Dubuque Initiatives is organized to render service to the city, that all of its assets go to the city if it dissolves, and that ultimately the city of Dubuque is considered financially accountable for DI. But that same audit also notes that the city was not allowed to audit the financial statements from Dubuque Initiatives, relying instead on the group's own reports. New DI board member Kate Larson says even though the public can't see what Dubuque Initiatives is doing, they shouldn't worry about it.
It seems like they really have their ducks in a row for the most part, so I haven't.
Trust them to keep good books on the behalf of Dubuque's taxpayers?
Yeah, absolutely. I do trust them.
That trust is key with how much money is at stake. According to its most recent tax filing in 2016, Dubuque Initiatives makes about $10 million a year in its investments. That doesn't include the $19 million it made from a private company it formed to manage the Roshek building. Horstman says their 2017 tax filing shows less than $100,000 in income, but that's not available to the public yet. With no paid staff, a 9-member board, including the mayor, city manager, and 2 city council members, get to decide how to spend that money. The group's meetings are private, as are the full details of its finances and who specifically might be benefiting.
Generally, no input as far as individuals in the community, as far as what projects they might want to be involved with, because it's just, generally these are pretty large projects.
With so much money and public influence, DI's board members note it has a conflict of interest policy.
That if we're doing a significant amount of business with any of the people on the board, those board members have to resign.
But city documents show that Dubuque Bank and Trust holds that loan for Dubuque Initiatives on the Roshek building. And the former CEO of Dubuque Bank and Trust is DI board president Doug Horstman.
The board vetted that and decided that because we had all the banks involved, we participated that loan with all the banks, or I shouldn't say all, but most of the banks in town, that we didn't see that as a conflict.
Because DI is a private organization, no one except those on the board know for sure if the conflict of interest policy is being followed. But board member and city councilman Brett Shaw says if members plan to bid on a project, they would not be allowed in those discussions.
The discussions that are occurring that lead up to the build out of those RFPs aren't necessarily going to put anybody at a greater advantage.
City council member Luis Del Toro says some of his constituents have raised concerns about this group. And 174 people signed a petition asking the state auditor's office to look into the relationship between the city and DI. Del Toro and Shaw admit the group could be more transparent, even giving quarterly or annual reports to the council.
If we heard from somebody from that organization that just said, here's our progress on the program, on the project that we're working with right now, and this is what we've accomplished over the last quarter, over the last year.
I don't see that would be a problem for DI at all. That certainly could help.
Van Milligan doesn't believe DI needs more transparency. He says all the public needs to know is made available to them.
They have a website, so the public can go on their website and it tells all about Dubuque Initiatives and what they're about and who's on the board and what projects they've done. So yeah, the public has full access to all that information.
Mayor Roy Buell is also on the board, but he declined to do an interview with me for this story. Now, a state audit did note that the city didn't follow procedure at least once when it comes to Dubuque Initiatives. In that case, the city gave an old engine house to DI for just $1. Then it let DI transfer the engine house to Dubuque Bank and Trust so it could take advantage of state tax credits. Now, the audit did not find any potential conflict of interest between the cities and the Dubuque Initiatives and their financial relationship. Live in Dubuque, Allison Wong, KCRG TV 9 News.